Climate action is really important to me personally. I think there's that initial curiosity. This was a thing back in the 80s and it was kind of interesting and kind of novel and neat. But now it's really urgent. I think about my kids, I think about how old they're going to be in the year 2100 and they're going to live through this. That's on us, that's on our parents, that's on our grandparents. We want to impact that outcome. We want to make sure that goes a different way. You know, having the power to use what skills you have to influence that outcome is actually really inspiring to me. It's not just about my kids and their future. You know, we're fortunate enough to live here in Australia, in Sydney, in a great environment, but the impact will be felt differently across the world, especially in developing nations, which is where I grew up. Firstly, there was a drive to actually do something. What can we do about this big issue, climate change? Initially, when I looked into it, I thought I'd have to be an engineer or a scientist to actually find something to do to help. But the big realization for me was that actually just working out what the size of the issue is, accounting for it, is actually one of the key steps that we actually need to make progress. Thinking about how you account for greenhouse gas emissions, what was interesting was that there is actually a global protocol for how to do this, and that's pretty great. It took financial accounting a long time to get there. That presents this opportunity to work out how to do this internationally and launch a business that would be international from day one as well. Having had the fortune of having been part of companies that have grown really quickly in the past, being an early employee, also having been the founder of a previous startup, I've seen what it takes to go from 0 to 1 and to actually get going. Armed with that knowledge, you know, we felt in a really good place to go and find a great co-founder in Charbel and get going with this business.
So it was Carl that inspired me to put my skill sets towards climate change. Previously in my career, I'd always looked at the product and how I can contribute to a product, irrespective of what industry or what sector it was. But then I met Carl, and yeah, he had a real positive impact on my understanding of the climate issue and how technology can play a vital role in fixing that.
The first challenge that we set out to solve was the accessibility to greenhouse gas expertise. There are only so many people in the world who have this knowledge today, and there is every single company in the world that needs to suddenly start accounting for their greenhouse gas emissions. So we need technology to help us scale that expertise to make this widely accessible.
Traditionally, the way we've gone about this is through spreadsheets, offline, a lot of consultants, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that can't scale. And that's where technology comes in, and it plays a vital role in ensuring that there's a transparent, consistent and secure communication of data across networks. Beyond security and transparency, a big deal that we aim to fix is accessibility and ease of use and user experience. A lot of people are brand new to this, and we believe that the user experience that we can provide can make it easier for just about anybody to do this exercise.
So the second challenge we set out to address was this issue of capital markets. So if we think about what's happening today in capital markets, where the urgency is coming from, it's that asset owners, for the first time, are actually starting to flex their muscle. They're trying to have impact in the way that they're managing ultimately our money. And they're having to think long term, and they're having to think about big trends like decarbonisation. So they have questions now that they didn't have in the past. For the first time, they're actually knocking on doors and asking, hey, can you actually tell us more about what's going on in terms of managing this climate risk in your portfolio? Are you aligned to the Paris Accord? Can we say that we're aligned to the Paris Accord? And very specifically, a lot of those institutional investors are actually making public commitments, and they're going to hold themselves accountable to demonstrate how they're actually decarbonising their portfolio over time and how they're managing this risk. And there's no ways that they can do that unless they gain that information from the professional managers that they employ to do this. So what's disruptive about the way that we do this? What's different about Pathzero? We're trying to create that direct line of communication between these asset owners and the businesses operating the actual assets at the bottom of these structures. Firstly, to work out what's going on there, what are the emissions, is this carbon intensive, is it carbon light? But then on top of that, having the opportunity to communicate what's being done about those emissions over time. So that creates that direct influence that you want to have as an asset owner to this particular issue. And when you then talk about that publicly, you have all the substantiation and backup you need to confidently talk about that and your commitments and how they're being met, and certainly not being called out for greenwashing. The background in financial services, and particularly the experience of working in a hedge fund in Europe, provided this context to see how capital moves globally and realizing the importance of directing that capital into the right areas. It really excited me that I could not only bring a chartered accountancy skill, but also this knowledge of financial services, and at that intersection really be able to have this impact. One of the values here at Pathzero is playing to your strengths, and it couldn't be clearer in terms of my relationship with Charbel and how we started this business.
When Carl and I met, it was very clear that we have very complementary skill sets. He's come from a strong financial background, I came from a strong technical background, and it just seemed to be a great match. Beyond that, I think what we're really good at, Carl and I, is really staying focused on the mission. From the get-go, it's always been quite easy for us to forget the noise and focus on one thing and just get things done.
Specifically for us then, I think these values that we have really enabled us to move really quickly. Trusting in each other's capabilities, playing to our strengths, making sure that we're really focused on only the things that are going to move the needle for us. Having that real crisp focus to say, there's 99 good things you could do today, but what's the one thing that's really going to matter now? So as we've now grown, we've ensured that that's instilled in any of the employees that join us. And that's something you'll hear around the corridors when we come to Pathzero. In terms of success to date, I think that the decarbonisation theme, the macro environment, if you like, has really accelerated a lot quicker than even we could have hoped. The urgency for companies to do this, probably because of COVID, has really meant that demand for the service has just gone up significantly. Our investors have got us to think bigger, to be more ambitious, to understand that there is a huge opportunity here that requires speed of execution and getting out there and making sure that we move really quickly. And that has been really inspiring, and it's been so motivating for us to feel that support and to be able to execute at this pace. It's a fast growth company.